Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Half Term 2. I hope that you've all managed to have a restful, enjoyable, and safe half-term break with your families. It's wonderful to be welcoming everybody back this morning, and I know that there will be mixed feelings as there were at the beginning of the academic year. However, I want to reassure everybody that our absolute priority is the safety and well-being of our whole community here at Walton. We have had an aim since the start of this academic year, which is to ensure that we bring our community back together, but in a safe, positive and successful manner. And that absolutely is what we intend to continue during this second half term. In our first half term, we had great success and lots to celebrate, despite the challenges and barriers and hurdles that we had to overcome. And I truly believe that that was down to not only the hard work, determination and grit that everybody displayed, but also down to the support, the kindness and the consideration of everybody, both to themselves and to each other. I know that moving forwards in half term 2, we will continue to show that support, that kindness and that consideration to ensure that we continue to have a community that is safe, that is positive and is successfully back on the academy site. I'm sure that you are all well aware of the latest government announcement, which was on Saturday, which does mean a national change to guidance from Thursday, when we will go into a national lockdown until the 2nd of December. The government have been very clear in that guidance that schools, colleges and universities are to remain open and to remain open for all students. So educational settings will continue. For us, that means that we will continue as we were prior to the half term. However, there are some updates and there are some reminders that I will go through with you today. These are all things that we discussed prior to the half term to start from today. I should also say that if there are any further updates, so I've got a meeting later on today with Dave Cotton as the CEO. So if there are any updates from the Trust, if there are any updates from the government with regards to guidance for secondary schools between now and when that new national guidance comes in place on Thursday, of course, we will update you with that as quickly as possible and as clearly as possible. And that goes for throughout the term in the same way that we did last term. Any updates, any changes or tweaks that need to be made, we will of course communicate that to you as soon as we possibly can. So in terms of our key updates with regards to the start of this term, at the end of last term, we spoke about some key updates with regards to the wearing of face coverings, with regards to meetings and also with regards to post-16 and year 12 study. So some reminders about those. From today, it is mandatory for all staff and students to wear face coverings whilst on academy site. That's both whilst moving around the site and also in any communal areas. If you look on the email, I've detailed very specifically what that means for staff. And also you've got attached on the email the letter that went home to parents prior to half term. So you can see exactly the expectations for students as well. Also attached to the email, you've got the expectations for students on the PowerPoint presentation, which will be shared in tutor time today with all students as a reminder for them. So all that information is there and should be nice and clear for everybody. In terms of face coverings, we mean either a surgical mask or a suitable, sensible cloth face mask. No offensive images or text will be allowed. There is an exemption list for students, so students that under government guidance are not required to wear a face covering. The list of those students is attached to the email. Currently there's only about 6 or 7 students on there. We will detail that on their SIMS page. Also, they will receive a little exemption card today, which will go into their lanyard so that they can show that to you should you require to see it. And that will also be the same for any staff that are exempt. They will also have a small exemption card to wear in their lanyard. If there are any students that go onto that list, we will of course update staff accordingly so that you are clear on those students. Secondly, we spoke about meetings prior to the half-term break. Now, due to the change in the national picture and the change in the national guidance that came out this weekend, we have made a slight tweak to this since before the half-term holidays. So all meetings now do need to take place virtually. So that's all meetings, faculty meetings, leadership team meetings, line management meetings. They all now need to take place virtually via Teams or via Skype. Any discussions that are taking place, okay, we need to make sure that whether they're inside or outside, that we've got 2 meters distance between those members of staff or between the member of staff and student, and that those discussions are no longer than 15 minutes long, and that those members of staff or that student is wearing a face covering. Again, all of that's detailed in my email, but the main message is that all meetings must now take place virtually. And that's so again that we're reducing that contact and we are doing everything we can to protect our community. Thirdly, we spoke about an update to post-16 and year 12 study. So year 12s now, when they only have study periods in the afternoon, they will be signing out at 1 o'clock and they will be exiting Academy site and they will be doing their afternoon study at home. And that's also going to continue for year 13 students who started doing that in half term 1. So in the afternoons, when year 12 or 13 have got study periods only, they will be signing out with a post-16 member of staff and they will be exiting and doing their afternoon study at home. If there are any exceptions to that, then the post-16 team will have individual conversations with those students and parents where needed. And again, the information that went home to students and to parents at the end of last half term, that's all on the email for you. So you can take a look at that and refer to that if you need to. Another thing I want to talk to you about in light of the changing national picture and the new national guidance is a reminder about distancing on Academy site. So we do really need to make sure that we're maintaining our teaching from the front and that we are maintaining that 2 meters distance between us and students in lessons. We know it's difficult and challenging, it's really against what we would normally do, but we really do need to maintain that distance to protect ourselves and to protect everybody else within the community. When we're moving around the Academy site, again, we need to be aiming at all times to keep that 2 meters distance between ourselves and other people. We know that there are areas where it's more challenging. That's why we've brought in the mitigation now of wearing the face coverings when we're moving around. But as much as possible, at all times, we need to be keeping that 2 meters distance as much as we can. When we are on duty, the 2 meters distance is also applicable to students when they're moving around and during unstructured time. And there's very clear messages that have come from me to students in their tutor update this morning about this. So when we're on duty, when we're moving around, if we can all support and please remind students that they also need to be keeping their distance. When they're in their groups at unstructured time, whether they're sat down or stood up, they need to be aiming to increase their distance. Again, we know it's strange for them, it's unnatural, it's not what we'd normally do, but we just all need to be reminding them to keep that distance. And when they're moving around the Academy, to be doing that in single file. Because if we're doing all those things, we're doing everything we can to protect ourselves and protect the rest of the community. In terms of distancing as well, in terms of faculty offices, again, we need to make sure that those faculty offices are distanced. So if there is more than one person in that office, we need to make sure that they are distanced within the office. If we can't do that, then it may be that some members of the faculty at some times need to utilise the library or the staff room as workspaces. They're all socially distanced and obviously have got the maximum capacity on there. And I know lots of staff have found that really useful up until now. So obviously those spaces are still there for people to use. Also remembering that when we enter and exit our lessons, so on arrival and exits, we're cleaning down those teacher stations and we're leaving the teacher stations nice and clear for the next member of staff, including cleaning down the whiteboard as well, so that all of that's been done and the next member of staff can come in, clean down the station and then get started with their lesson. Again, just so we're supporting each other and being considerate of each other and looking after each other whilst we're on the academy site. Other things that are slight changes and slight tweaks, all of these are attached on the email in the PowerPoint that's going out to students today during tutorial time, and also attached to the email you'll see the new duty rota, so please do look at that because there are some changes on there as well for both break time and lunchtime duties. So the field is now shut, so that means there's some changes to the unstructured time zones. So please do look at that carefully and please do go through that with your tutor groups this morning. There's also on there very clear arrangements for students with regards to wet break and what happens there and where they should go. Excitingly, we've now got our canopy on site, which is brilliant. So that is helping with some of those wet weather and poor weather arrangements. I've already mentioned we've got the staff duty rota, so do check that you know exactly where you're going, whether it's a dry break or whether it's a wet break. Please have a look so you know exactly where you're stationed. Students today are going to get lanyards, so we've got lanyards for all year groups now, so you can really clearly identify each bubble, and so we can really ensure that we don't have crossings of bubbles at any time of the day. And just on that, movement, as we know, is really, really key. So when students are moving, be that in between lessons, be that at the start or at the end of instruction time, we must make sure that we're using the correct bells and that we're sending students on the bell, not before, not after, and that students are really clear that they've got to move swiftly. That's particularly for Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5 students who are moving in between lesson time and also moving themselves at the end of break and lunchtime rather than being escorted. And also with that, the end of the day. So the end of the day is really important. We've now got bells at the end of the day to try and help us and support everybody. But again, please make sure you're using the right bell for the right year group and that we are escorting our class either up to the top gate if it's year 8 or 9 or down to the bottom gate if it's one of the other year groups. That's so important that we do that and we all support each other with that, because again, it will help us to prevent any crossing of bubbles that just simply doesn't need to happen. Also on the email, I've already mentioned on the PowerPoint that there's the information for students about face covering, so tutors can go through and remind them of that. I should also say that we have got spare face coverings in school. We will have those on the gate this morning, so anybody that's forgotten or hasn't got a face covering will be given one on the gate this morning by leadership to wear. We will also be giving face coverings to the year leaders, so again, we can hopefully quickly spot any issues with face coverings first thing this morning and get those resolved very quickly. And hopefully once we've got over the first 2-3 days, we won't have any major issues with that and students will remember to bring their face coverings, but we do always have spares in the academy, so if there's ever any issues, just email the pastoral team and we can make sure we get a face covering to a student if needs be. Finally, on the PowerPoint to students, you will see some information about ensuring they are layering up and keeping warm, and this goes for staff as well. So we are moving into colder months. So as we've said to students, make sure you've got a robust outside coat with you and outside clothing, because we will be using outside at unstructured time as much as possible. Also, we've got to keep the ventilation in classrooms, so doors and windows need to remain open. The guidance from the government is very clear on that. So whilst we have got our heating on, we still need to keep those ventilation of the windows and the doors. So for staff, in the same way as students, make sure you layer up. We've said to students about using vests, about using plain light coloured kind of t-shirts underneath their uniform that can't be seen, so that they're keeping themselves as warm as possible, and that goes for staff as well. As we said prior to the holidays, if staff feel that it's appropriate for students to wear their coats in lessons because it's actually just got so cold, then absolutely that's up to staff discretion to do that, but you're more than welcome to allow students to do that in your lessons. That's not a problem at all, and that's something that we will continue to review throughout the term as we know we move into these colder months. That's quite a lot of information already, and I'm conscious. I've just looked at my time and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's 15 minutes already. But please rest assured that all of those things that we've gone through are being put in place for the safety of everybody. And like I said at the beginning, we want to continue to be back safely, positively and successfully. And we want to continue to show that support, that kindness and consideration to ourselves and to each other. So everything we're putting in place is about keeping the community as safe as we possibly can. So finally from me, this is the start of a new term, and there are lots of things, as we would normally expect, going on in this term, albeit some of them a little bit differently. So we have got our first online parents' evening coming up next week. We've got our online virtual open evening for post-16. We've got planned mock examinations for Key Stage 4 and 5. We've got planned practical weeks, therefore, for Key Stage 3. And of course, we've got lots of events going on in our cultural calendar. We've got Armistice Day coming up that we'll be marking. And of course, nowhere quite does Christmas like Rolton, do they? And although it might look a little bit different this year, I want to reassure you that we will absolutely be showing that normal festive spirit and festive vibe around the Academy. So do keep your eyes and ears open for various things that will be coming your way with regards to that. So I want to wish you all a great first day back in the Academy and a great first week back as well. We will keep you updated if there are any further changes at all. I want to make it really clear that if we do have to change things, so if we do have to send a year group bubble home, if we have to go into any kind of rota, if we have to go into a full lockdown and close the school, that we do have everything in place in terms of our contingency planning. Mike is going to work this week again on that, and he's going to work with middle leaders to ensure that we've got everything in place and that everybody is feeling very confident. So if things do change and we need to put those contingency plans in place, we've got it all there and it's ready to go. And there's been lots of hard work on that already, and just a big thank you to everybody for that. And a big thank you to Mike for continuing to work on that with everybody this week. So have a good first day and a first week back. We will keep you updated with any changes. If you've got any concerns, any queries, there's no silly questions, there's no daft questions, please pop and see me, send me an email, come and see one of us, and we'll happily talk to you. Okay, speak to you all soon.